Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4. So today we're going to go through our lab safety guidelines. In a science lab, it's really important that we follow the rules. And when we all come back together in school, eventually you'll need to know all of these things. And it's a good general rule of thumb to know. So science is a hands-on laboratory class. Students will be doing many laboratory activities that require the use of chemicals, laboratory equipment, and other items which, if used incorrectly, can be hazardous. Introductory physics, which is Physical Science 9, is primarily not a lab class, but we will be doing a few labs that require students to understand the basics of lab safety. Along with that, if you are at home, sometimes we may ask you to conduct the labs on your own using materials that you can find in most homes. So, rule number 1. We are going to conduct yourself in a responsible manner in the laboratory at all times. No horseplay is allowed at any time. Do not share the lab equipment. Do your share of the lab. Do not rely on your partner to do all the work before starting the lab. Work out a way to share the responsibilities. When first entering a science room, do not touch any of the equipment, chemicals, or other materials in the laboratory area until you're instructed to do so. The lab also has many items in storage. Do not poke around in the cabinets or drawers. Number 4, read instructions carefully. Many questions you might have are answered in your lab handouts. Do not skip steps. Follow the directions in the order they are given. Number 5, do not eat or drink in the lab. All chemicals should not be directly inhaled. There's a technique called wafting that we will go over, and that's how chemicals should be smelled to determine different things. You may be required to wear safety goggles during some investigations like dissections or other chemistry exams or labs. Keep your area clean and free of clutter. Backpacks should be left in the classroom at your desk or stored in the front of the lab where no one will trip over them. Leave your table the way you found it. Always make sure you clean up. It got cut off here, but do not wander around the room, distract other students, startle other students, or interfere with the laboratory experiments of others. Stay in your assigned area and do not visit your friends on the other side of the lab. Know the locations and operating procedures of all safety equipment, including first aid kits, fire extinguishers, and eye wash, especially here. Eye wash and our safety shower. Know where the fire alarm and the exits are located. Report any accidents like a spill or a break or an injury to the teacher. Glass must be cleaned up in a proper way and disposed of in the proper areas, never the trash. All chemicals in the lab are to be considered dangerous, avoiding handling chemicals with fingers. You never know what you might touch next and what chemicals might be on them. Always use tweezers if possible. Never taste any chemicals even if it seems safe to in the lab. Never remove equipment or chemicals or specimens from the lab unless you are given permission. Your clothing must be adequate for lab activities. No scarves, ties, loose sweatshirts, or any other items of clothing that may unintentionally interact with the lab materials. If you have long hair, it should also be tied back away from lab materials. 14, return all materials to their proper storage place before leaving the lab. And 15, wash your hands with soap and water before and after lab. Failure to follow the lab safety rules will result in you being removed from the lab and receiving a 0 for that portion. By completing today's ed puzzle, you're going to be saying that you complete and sign and you agree with these rules. So we are going to go through the scenarios. So starting with lab, during the lab in class, Carlos realizes his group of friends need more chemicals. Without asking the teacher, he leaves the room and enters the science prep room and storage areas to receive more chemicals. Which lab safety rule did Carlos break? Carlos broke rule number 3. All right, rule number 3 is the one Carlos broke. Jane is participating in a lab in which she blows carbon dioxide into a beaker of chemicals. Some of the chemical bubbles up and gets in her eye. Her partners tell her to use the eye wash fountains and rinse out her eyes. However, she does not know where the eye wash fountains are located. Which lab rules did she break? Jane broke rule number 6 and 9. 6 and 9. Number 3, It's the first lab in science class, and Harry cannot control his excitement. Without waiting for instruction, Harry turns on the hot plate. His partner does not know that it's on, and he reaches over to grab a pencil and gets burned. Which rules were broken in number 3? Rules number 3 and 4 were broken. Number 4, Brent is in first period and he skipped breakfast today. He decides to have a bagel in his backpack and he will eat it during class when the teacher is not looking. Which rule is Brent breaking? Brent is breaking rule number 5. Number 5, in order to make sure the correct chemical is being used, Ben smells the chemical. Instead of using his hand to waft the vapors towards his nose, he sticks his nose as close as he can to the chemical and takes a big whiff of the tray. He feels dizzy and his nose burns for the rest of the day. Which rule did he break? Brent broke rule number 5. Rule number 5. Liz goes into the lab with her backpack on. She turns to talk to a friend and her backpack knocks a beaker full of chemical onto the floor and it shatters. Which rule did Liz break? Liz broke rule number 7. Rachel in number 7. Rachel wants to look as pretty as possible and all the time, or pretty as possible all the time, and so there's no way she'll be caught wearing nerdy protective goggles. She continues through the lab without any problems until Joel accidentally knocks her into the table. He knocks over a beaker of boiling chemical and it splashes into Rachel's eyes. And in number 7, what rule was broken? Rule number 6 was broken in number 7. In number 8, Cindy broke a test tube. She carefully picks up the pieces with one hand and places them in her other. She dumped the glass pieces into the wastebasket. What rule was broken in number 8? Cindy broke a test tube, and that was number 10. She broke rule number 10. Mike and Colleen have a lot of chemical left over from their investigation. They dumped the chemical into the sink and left the water in the sink running in the sink as they left class. What rule is broken? That would be rules number 11 and 14. Number 10, Diana and Mike were going to be late for their next class. After rushing to put away a few materials, they left the rest of the materials on the table. What rule did they break? They broke rule number 14. Number 11, the teacher was not yet in the room. Jake began weighing chemicals and touching them with his hands. His nose itched, so he rubbed it. All right. Jake broke rules number 11 and 3. Number 12, Heather and Jennifer were absent the day before when the investigation was discussed. They gathered the materials and watched their classmates to see what they were doing, not taking the time to read the directions. They broke rule number 4. Students are conducting an experiment to see the color different salts turn when they are burned. Jack dares Rebecca to taste the other salts to see if they taste like regular table salt. They broke rules number 5 and 11. Number 14, what is the consequence for not following the lab rules and procedures? You will receive a 0 and be removed from class. And why is it dangerous not to follow the lab rules and procedures? It is a safety concern and it will cause errors in your lab. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.